Earl shows up, and he's like got his hands on his hips going like, this is where the whistle's coming from. Like, he sounds kind of angry, right? And so we're like, are we disturbing you? He's like, are you kidding? I'm going to go get my wife, Miriam. I'm going to get my fiddle. We're coming over and we're playing some tunes.
So who's going to tell me the story of how the Bookends got the name and how you, four of you, got together?
Well, those are actually kind of two different stories, really.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Which one would you like first?
The story of how we got together, I guess I'll tell that one. And then maybe Pete can tell the story about how we got the name.
Sure.
So Miriam and I are originally from Alberta, and Pete and Kate are obviously, Stratford. As local gets here in this
Pete
town.
Is for sure.
Yeah.
Both from Ontario.
And
that.
Pete obviously from Toronto, but they'd been living here for a fair while, and so we moved out here for work, and we packed up the kids and our lives and the cat and everything else in the truck, and we drove all the way from Alberta out. It took us 4 days, and we got out here, and I was staying in a house that my boss owned, and so, she had said, oh, there's some lovely folks out here, and we hope you'll meet some great folks. And so anyways, Miriam and I, we pulled up with the truck to the place, and Pete and Kate came over with the box of Rio Thompson chocolates.
You got it. That's the introduction to Stratford.
It sure was. And so we're like, oh, they're really nice folks. And, turns out, they have 2 kids and same age as ours. And we're like, well, that's pretty perfect. And so anyways, Miriam and I had been playing Celtic music out in Alberta for quite a while. And so anyways, we got out, and, it'd been a really stressful time. Just getting everything loaded up and putting your whole life in a box and driving across the country. And so as we were unloading the truck one night, I could hear this whistle. And I'm like, that's really weird. And so I'm starting to wonder if I'm losing my mind at this point. And so I just I didn't think much of it. And then the next night, working away at the house, unpacking things, and I could hear the whistle again. And I'm like, okay, I'm really starting to either there's a whistle around here or I'm losing it. And so I decided I would go echolocate the whistle. So down the end of the driveway I went, and I could hear it. And I went one way down the block, and it got a little quieter. And I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe it's the other way. I went down the other way down the block. It got a little quieter. I'm like, well, maybe it's the next street over. I checked there, and I'm like, no, it is literally coming from across the street from our house. And I'm like, okay, well, I keep following it. It's getting louder and louder. And I'm walking down Pete and Kate's driveway, and I'm like, it's getting louder. And so anyways, lo and behold, I pop my head over the back fence, and there's Pete and Kate playing some tunes on their back porch, just in a beautiful, fall day.
If I can interject, because I always like to interject at this moment,
Sure.
is like Earl shows up, and he's like got his hands on his hips going like, this is where the whistle's coming from. Like, he sounds kind of angry, right? And so we're like, okay, are we disturbing?
Another annoying neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, are we disturbing you? He's like, are you kidding? I'm going to go get my wife, Miriam. I'm going to get my fiddle. We're coming over and we're playing some tunes.
And that's kind of how the band started. And,
that is the story.
Yeah, we kind of played a few tunes, and then, we were coming into winter, so it worked out really nicely. We being across the street, and we just kind of make a regular thing of it and played lots of tunes.
Yeah, I mean, that's with the kids. I mean, the kids, everybody became great friends really quickly. And so the kids played together. The band, we were playing together every weekend. We'd share meals together. And we never really set out to be a band. We were really just playing music together. And so it was, and we just explored all this music together. I mean, Errol's been playing Celtic music since he was a kid. And Miriam had lots of exposure back in Calgary as well, but it was kind of new to Kate and I. We were exploring this, and so we just looked into all this music together and really mined the depths of various different types of tune books. But to answer your question about how did we end up getting the name, so if I can segue off of what Errol was just saying there, is that many months later, his boss had actually asked us to do some playing, and so we'd played with her and some other musicians over at Falstaff, and then we did something for her in London. And I ran into her one day at the coffee shop, Balzac's downtown, like everybody does, and she looks at me and she goes, so, you guys, that's a band, that's a great band, right? And she goes, you guys have got to play more stuff, because the whole family's you're like a couple of bookends. And so she said this to me in passing. I don't even know that she remembers, actually.
Not,
yeah,
no.
and so it's like, but
it stuck with us.
But it stuck, and we were kind of into that moment now. We're like, hey, maybe we got something here, and we should take this a little bit further and see how it evolves. Mm-hmm. And so we thought, well, that seemed, when we threw all the other names out there, and we had a few others as well. That was kind of the one that that really stuck. And we just thought that's a funny name because you got the 2 dads, the 2 moms, the 2 daughters, and the 2 sons. We just don't have the cat. But, you know, we probably got a few mice in our house, so it's like, you know, it balances out.
Well, we should point out that the boss is actually Lorena McKennett, who is a pretty fine musician in her own right. So having her blessing is amazing. And you've just come off a Christmas tour with her. Tell us about that. That's a very interesting tour that you were on.
Yeah, I mean, well, this started as a project that Lorena had approached us about sort of in the depths of COVID lockdown. Well, just coming out of the depths of COVID lockdown, and things were a little bit sensitive still last December, but we'd all had a bit of cabin fever, and she was looking for a way to lift spirits again. And so we did this as a project, a series of live concerts last December. And this year she was excited to try it again and take it farther afield, and asked if we would participate again. And so we did a number of dates and touring around some unique locations. When we were performing in Stratford, we played at Copper Light at the previous Knox Church. And her project too included looking at these spaces that are trying to reinvigorate themselves and continue to offer more opportunities for performing artists. And so in Hamilton and in Guelph and a number of other locations, we were playing in church spaces that are in the midst of trying to reinvigorate themselves in that way. So it was a really beautiful part of that experience, and the music just gives everyone sort of a warm and comfortable community feeling about the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I might add to that, I mean, it's a long way from what the Bookends do. I mean, the Bookends is the 4 of us. This is something where we're sort of, supporting Lorena, and it wasn't a complete band. It was 3 out of 4 of us, and so, it's something where we're playing Lorena's tunes. But it was a great joy to be able to be a part of it. And maybe we'll get to do it again in the future, and maybe all 4 of us can do it next time. And so it was really a great experience. Definitely, you learn a lot playing with someone like Lorena. She's an absolute pro, and she's got it worked out, and she has a fabulous production manager
named Errol.
Yeah, man of many hats.
Musician, roadie, production manager, everything, right?
Well, you have to diversify in this business, right?
I call him the Mad Hatter because of the number of hats he wears.
Yeah, well, to see him in action is inspiring. Actually.
And you're also a stonemason. That's amazing.
Yeah, I am. When we had the kids, I was touring a lot as a tour manager and production manager and stuff, and that just doesn't necessarily mesh with young children. And so I came off the road for a little while, and I had a passion for building things out of rocks. My dad had bought what is a very old house in Calgary, but by Stratford standards would be new basically. It was built in 1893. And so it's one of the first houses out in Calgary, but we had stripped it down, and anyways, I got and built a set of stairs on the front of the place, and I developed a love of masonry from there. And then once we had the kids, I started a masonry company, and it grew and it grew and it grew, and so that was kind of where I was before I left off to come out here. So,
well, where my family comes from in Northern Ireland, there's a lot of rocks and a lot of stonemasons. So I'm thinking that being a stonemason, there is a connection to the Celtic tradition.
Yeah, it goes together. It's actually surprising how many masons are musicians and a lot of whistle players and stuff, because you can play a few tunes while you're having a break and that kind of thing. And there's something about the artistry of the two things that tie together.
You're building something.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether it's music or dry stack walls.